title today is my title today is The Universe is a Hologram, as a hologram. And in the last newsletter, I promised that I would provide proof accepted by all faith traditions that wholeness is our nature, that life is eternal, that we are divine. And I am going to do that, but first I need to lay some groundwork. Everybody knows a hologram as a computer-generated image that can interact with a person. Why do we know that? How do we know that? We know that because it's a part of the plot line of 3 out of 5 TV shows or movies. But do you know what a hologram actually is? It is a 3-dimensional photographic image, yes. But what makes it a hologram is that if you took a holographic plate, which is kind of like a negative, and smashed it into a zillion pieces, every single broken shard would contain the entire image. Nothing would be lost. So that's the groundwork for hologram. Now comes the groundwork for the universe. There is one spiritual truth that is accepted and taught by every faith tradition on earth. And here it is. God created the universe and everything within it. And before God created the universe and everything within it, nothing existed except God. This is where some traditions get a little tangled up because it means that God is the universe and everything in it, even though the universe is not all of God. Is your head spinning a little bit? Don't worry, we'll take it one step at a time. First, before the universe existed, God existed. Comfortable with that, right? Okay. Before the universe existed, nothing existed except God. Still okay. Therefore, the only substance from which God could have created the universe and everything in it was God's own substance. That is to say, God created everything that exists out of itself. That's why in Science of Mind, we teach that God is everywhere equally present. We also know that God is infinite. So the hook here is that while everything and everyone in the universe is within God, made out of God, and therefore divine, the universe does not actually contain God because God cannot be contained. Instead, the universe is an expression of God, and so is every single person, place, or thing within it. You're starting to see where I'm heading here, right? God is in everything, but not contained by anything. All of creation is within God and completely saturated by God. To examine any of God's creations is to examine God itself. So each of us is one of those holographic shards I mentioned in the beginning, a perfect expression of all that God is. This is important. You might want to write it down. There is nothing that is part of God that is not also part of you. There is nothing that is part of God that is not also part of you. That's where the idea of wholeness comes into play. God is whole, right? No question there. Each of us is a perfect expression of all that God is, right? Accepting this truth, how could anyone not be whole? I know there are lots of physical challenges, and they're part of the human experience. The wholeness we're talking about is experienced through a shift in consciousness. Ernest Holmes told us to change our thinking in order to change our lives. And many others have taught that same concept over the years. Here's why it works. We are spiritual beings expressing divine ideas in a physical world. And we get to choose how we see that world through our consciousness. There is one caveat I want to state here just for the sake of completeness and clarity, and that is wholeness and healing are not synonyms for cure. The idea of curing an illness or challenge is working only in the world of effects. But in the science of mind, we learn that the world of effects is molded by the world of spirit, by consciousness, in other words, and consciousness causes physical expression. No matter the troubles we face, we always have infinite opportunities to see them rightly. It's always possible to shift our consciousness about how we see them and to experience a healing. Because we live in God's heart. By the power of our beliefs, we can invite the perfect love of God to bring us to a place of wholeness. This is not a new idea. The master teacher Jesus advised that we seek the kingdom of wholeness first. He called it the kingdom of God, same thing. And then the things of this world will be added to our lives. To be whole in consciousness results in being whole in our physical life. Our new thought approach to seeking the kingdom is to utilize the spiritual practices of prayer, meditation, visioning, and speaking affirmations. Those are wonderful tools. And we use those tools to shift our consciousness. Other practices include gratitude, my personal favorite, forgiveness, and compassion. And in utilizing these tools and practices, we are steeping our minds and hearts in a conscious awareness of our unity with and in the divine. Now, while seeking the sacred dimension of life first is sound spiritual guidance, we also know that Spirit provided us with tools for living an elegant life. We weren't created to be just a little piece of a picture of God. Everything God is included in every one of us. So God didn't just fashion us after its own image and place us in the garden, and it gave us dominion over life. It put us in charge of the bus. We are acknowledging that controlling our conditions is not our highest spiritual calling, but exercising our dominion can help remove the distractions of disappointment, failure, probably the most common, feeling less than. So we take charge of our life. We practice dominion and we clear the circuits of our consciousness in order to make ourselves ready to experience wholeness, to be wholeness, to feel the truth that we are whole. Our sense of wholeness often has to do with our expectations, and our expectations have to do with our desires. On the deepest level, our desires are actually our yearning to experience the qualities of God in our lives. We inherently know that deep within us is pure wholeness, and we want to feel that. Joseph Campbell said, we all want to feel the rapture of being alive. I would say we all want to feel the rapture of being divine. Sometimes we try to experience this rapture through a relationship with someone else. That means we have expectations, and when they're not met, we feel incomplete. It feels like disappointment or anger. But the more aware we are of the expectation behind the anger or the expectation behind the disappointment, the healthier the emotion is in our life, and the better chance we have of learning from it, blessing it, and letting it go. In other words, the more conscious we are, the more real our sense of wholeness feels. It is Spirit's greatest desire to give us the kingdom. Jesus said that. It is God's great pleasure to give us the kingdom, to give us a life of wholeness. And we were created in the full expression of the life and power that created the universe. We have been created in the complete and perfect image of the divine, and we have been given the depth of heart and the tools to elevate our awareness to the level of a whole life. After all, each human mind is a point of consciousness in the mind of God. Our responsibility is to do the work, to cultivate the perception of oneness through our prayers and meditation, to exercise dominion by living mindfully, and to look at our expectations, understanding what it is we are truly seeking. Pema Chodron, in When Things Fall Apart, she was a Buddhist monk, is a Buddhist monk. In her book, When Things Fall Apart, said, just as a jewel buried in the earth for 1,000,000 years is not discolored, our noble heart is not affected by our kicking and screaming. The jewel can be brought out into the light and it will glow brilliantly. No matter how committed we are to unkindness or greed, our heart is completely whole. Hafiz, one of my favorite poets, said the same thing, but a different way. The beloved said, "My name is not complete without yours. I am made whole by your life. Each soul completes me." I love stories. So here's a story that illustrates this idea of wholeness. Once upon a time, there was a man who was searching for the ultimate truth. And he was told to go to a cave. And in the cave, he would find a well and the answer would be shown to him. Ask the well, what is truth, he was told, and a well will reveal it to you. So he found the cave and he went inside, and sure enough, there's the well. So he asked the well this question, the biggest question on his heart: what is truth? And from the depths of the well, there was a reply: "Go to the village crossroad. There you shall find what you are seeking." That was just my imitation of a well. Filled with hope, the man ran to the crossroad, and all he found was 3 sort of ordinary looking shops. One was selling pieces of metal, another was selling pieces of wood, and the third sold little thin pieces of metal. Nothing and no one there seemed to have much to do with the revelation of truth. And he was really disappointed, so he went back to the well and he demanded an explanation, but he was told, my favorite thing, just wait, you'll get it. Just wait, you'll get it. Feeling that he had been made to look foolish, he left the cave and set out on his own quest, seeking the truth in his own terms, in his own way. Years passed and he got older and he moved more slowly and more deliberately. And he began to take more time being in his life, being more present with what was before him, seeing things more completely. One night he was walking through a village and the sound of sitar music caught his attention. It was beautiful, played with great mastery and inspiration. He was deeply moved. So he sat at the sitar player's feet and he watched the musician's fingers moving over the strings. And he began to intently see the sitar itself. And in that moment, the light came on. He realized that the sitar was made out of wires, little thin pieces of metal, other pieces of metal, and wood. Just exactly the things that were sold, that he had seen sold years before in the 3 stores at the crossroad. He understood at last the message of the well, that he'd already been given everything he needed, and that his task was to assemble it and use it, put the pieces together and use the tool. Parts of our lives seem not so meaningful as long as we perceive only separate fragments. But when we see the fragments as parts of a whole, a deeper, more vivid reality of meaning emerges. So how do we go about putting this into practice in our own lives? Eckhart Tolle said, listen to this is probably the best piece of advice you'll ever get. When listening to another, don't just listen with your mind. Listen with your whole body. What really matters is the being, with a capital B, of the other person underneath the words. This is the realization of oneness, which is love. Find where you are called to listen more deeply in the world. Can you see past the surface and experience the being with a capital B? Can you accept that, in fact, in truth, wholeness is our nature? Life is eternal, and we are divine. There's the truth I promised you in your own consciousness, in your own self. So you might ask yourself these questions and then listen for the answers. Listen for the answers that come through guidance and inspiration. First question, what is your definition of wholeness? Or better yet, what is your definition of you being whole? Second question, what limiting belief or idea have you held about a lack of wholeness that you're willing to release now? And third, think about a time, a moment when you felt whole, when you felt absolutely one with God or the universe or life. And look for ways you can feel that feeling now, right now, no matter when now is, every now, every moment. Let's take this into treatment, shall we? I'm going to share with you a prayer that was written by Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson about 3 years ago for a class of CSL ministers that he was teaching American Sign Language. And so I'm going to say the prayer out loud, but I'm going to sign it while I'm at it. God is all there is. The presence of life, love, happiness, and wisdom. All of these things are here now. This list is true about God. That means this list is true about me. True biz. God and me separate? Impossible. Only God is all things complete. I accept and allow my mind, my heart, my life to express the wondrous nature of this list, which is in, through, and as me. Wow. It is so good to be alive, to demonstrate love, peace, health, happiness, and so much more. I gratefully surrender this prayer. And the law accepts and acts upon it. This means what? That prayers are answered later? No. The answer is complete now. Amen. Aho. Ashe. And so it is. Namaste.